The silence inside Kensington Palace ended with a single security call. William had just been informed that Camilla's private secretary had requested access to sealed estate files belonging to Diana, records containing personal correspondence, inheritance instructions, and documents never intended for the Queen Consort's household. Within minutes, the Prince of Wales was on his feet, his expression hardened, and one question echoed through the royal residence. Why was Camilla trying to enter the most protected part of Diana's private legacy? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William reviewed charity correspondence when the warning reached him. He stopped and placed his pen on the desk. Then he asked the aide to repeat the name. Camilla. Confirmation changed disbelief into controlled anger. Her office had submitted an urgent request through a palace administrative channel, a system normally used for inheritance reviews or constitutional emergencies. Using that route gave the inquiry authority and meant someone wanted the files opened very quickly. The prince demanded the request. Diana's private estate archive, the secured collection of personal records controlled by trustees rather than the royal household, was supervised by his legal representatives, an independent custodian, and archivist Eleanor Ashcombe. That structure prevented rank or pressure from overriding the late princess's instructions. No family member could ask to look inside. Even Charles could not command those protections away without clear legal authority. William read the listed folders twice. The first contained Diana's instructions concerning her sons. The second held letters written during her final years. The third recorded family possessions and the conditions governing them. His jaw tightened. These were not historical papers. They contained a mother's words to children who had lost her, and decisions she may have made because she feared others might one day speak in her place. Then one detail sharpened the threat. Camilla's request carried the words, time-sensitive. The Queen Consort had not sought historical clarification. Her household appeared to be searching for something before an approaching estate review. William asked Eleanor whether anyone had touched the archive. The archivist answered through a security call that every seal remained intact, but another authorization attempt could follow unless he acted. The future king ordered the request frozen, blocked access codes, and instructed advisors to record every name attached to it. He announced that he would speak directly to Camilla himself. No secretary would soften his words. No official statement would hide the insult behind procedure. But before William could demand an explanation, he had to face the painful truth that this confrontation was about far more than a locked cabinet of old papers. William and Camilla entered the coming confrontation carrying entirely different versions of the same history. To the future king, Diana remained a mother whose private voice had been repeatedly claimed by strangers. To the Queen Consort, those sealed files represented a chapter of royal history that still shaped every judgment made about her. Neither could approach the archive without confronting decades of grief, guilt, suspicion, and a rivalry that Diana herself was no longer present to explain. William stood before the meeting, holding a childhood photograph beside Diana. He had watched her letters, jewelry, and memories become fuel for arguments over who she had truly been. That history mattered because every new claim took something personal and turned it into public property. The prince had sworn that her private estate, the protected collection of possessions, instructions, and correspondence left after her death, would not suffer the same fate. An aide entered and confirmed the painful detail. Camilla's request included folders addressed specifically to the sons of the princess. William lowered the photograph, and sadness hardened into resolve. Those words were not symbolic. They meant messages intended for him and Harry could have been exposed to a household with no personal right to read them. Camilla sat elsewhere with a briefing note she had read twice. She felt insulted by the speed of William's suspicion, yet the Queen Consort understood its source. For years, she had worked beside Charles, while knowing that Diana's memory still shaped public judgment, loyalties, and the future king's willingness to trust her. Success had given her rank, but it had never freed her from the shadow of the woman whose absence carried power. Charles received confirmation that the request had been frozen, but the king contacted neither side. He remained silent, and that hesitation mattered. As Diana's former husband and Camilla's present one, He understood that any intervention could look like betrayal. Yet his refusal to speak suggested he already knew why the files had become important. Then, archivist Eleanor Ashcombe contacted William through a recorded security call. She revealed that someone from Camilla's household had previously asked whether Diana left written instructions about the future use of a historic London residence. Eleanor explained that an archivist is the official guardian who preserves sensitive records and controls who may lawfully examine them. Her documented account transformed the request from curiosity into a search for authority. William finally understood that the estate files were tied to property, symbolism, and perhaps a private promise Diana had made directly to him years earlier. That hidden promise had first resurfaced during one private ceremony, the moment palace officials would later identify as the true point of no return. The attempt to access Diana's files did not begin with a sudden impulse. Its true origin lay 6 weeks earlier, inside a small Windsor reception, where an apparently ceremonial conversation transformed into a private royal crisis. A historic residence associated with Diana was being discussed for a new charitable purpose, when an archivist quietly informed Camilla that the late princess had left sealed instructions concerning its future. Camilla's expression changed instantly, and William noticed every second of it. Camilla had arrived expecting an announcement about a family support initiative. The proposal would convert part of a royal residence into offices for counselors and outreach teams. That mattered because the project promised success for the Queen Consort, while answering criticism that royal property served ceremony more often than families. Eleanor Ashcombe interrupted that confidence with one sentence. The estate archivist explained that an archivist is the official guardian responsible for preserving sensitive records and controlling lawful access. She stated that no permanent decision could proceed until sealed instructions left by Diana during the final restructuring of her private estate had been considered. What had sounded charitable now depended on words no one present could read. Camilla asked whether those instructions could block the project. Eleanor answered that only William and the estate trustees could authorize access. Trustees are people required to protect property and follow the deceased person's written wishes, even when relatives object. The Queen Consort's smile vanished. William saw the change and understood that the residence had become more than a building to her. William approached Camilla near the doorway after the reception. He kept his voice low, but the warning carried force. Anything written by his mother would be handled by Diana's sons, he said, not absorbed into another royal household's program. Camilla replied that she wanted clarity, not possession. Yet the prince heard impatience beneath her words, and she recognized distrust beneath his. Charles faced the tension that evening, when Camilla described the exchange in a recorded conversation preserved in household notes. She told the king that the residence could not remain frozen around a memory no one is permitted to examine. He warned her not to challenge William directly, but she insisted Diana's sealed instructions were already controlling decisions. 3 days later, Camilla's office began assembling legal arguments for an archival review. William later discovered memoranda, claiming her charitable role created a legitimate interest in restrictions affecting the property. The final request was no accident. It was the result of a deliberate 6-week effort authorized within her household. Armed with that knowledge, William entered the confrontation, no longer asking whether Camilla had crossed the line, but how far she had intended to go. There were no advisors, no private secretaries, and no carefully prepared palace statements when William entered Camilla's sitting room. He carried only a printed copy of the access request, and the anger of a son who believed his mother's final sanctuary had been violated. Camilla remained seated, as he placed the page on the table between them. Then William spoke 6 words that stripped away every royal title in the room. "You had no right to ask." William refused to let officials turn the violation into a debate over procedure. Palace precedent, the pattern created by earlier royal decisions, could explain authority, but it could not excuse intrusion. The prince wanted no softened language, no administrative misunderstanding, and no aide nearby to protect them from what had to be said. Camilla held his stare and answered that the files might contain instructions affecting the residence linked to her charitable program. She said she had sought clarification, not control over Diana's personal history. The Queen Consort insisted that a property decision could not remain frozen forever, because of documents no one would examine. William pushed the request towards her, and pointed to the folders concerning Diana's sons. His voice tightened. He asked why letters addressed to him and Harry had been included in what Camilla still called a property review. The future king said those pages belonged to 2 grieving children before any institution, and that distinction was the boundary her household had ignored. Camilla rose and accused William of assuming the worst because he had never separated her present role from the pain surrounding his mother's marriage. She said every question became evidence against her, yet the prince did not retreat. He answered that suspicion had not created the wording. Someone inside her office had. Then William disclosed the preserved internal message. Archivists had recorded a written query asking whether Diana's instructions contained language that could limit the standing of the current queen. An internal message is a documented communication kept within an organization's official records, making denial harder once investigators retrieve it. Camilla read the line twice. Her anger disappeared. The Queen Consort claimed she had never authorized that question. She sounded genuinely stunned, but William could not tell whether he was witnessing betrayal or retreat from an effort now exposed. He told her every person involved would be identified, every communication examined, and every access route blocked. William turned towards the door and delivered the final condition. Diana's archive would remain sealed until Charles chose where he stood. The confrontation had become a test not only of Camilla's explanation, but of whether Charles would protect his wife, his son, or the boundary Diana left behind. Charles received the news in his private study, where the monarchy's most personal crisis had suddenly become a question of royal authority. On one side stood Camilla, demanding that her intentions be judged fairly. On the other stood William, refusing to negotiate over his mother's sealed words. The king read the access request in silence, removed his glasses, and placed them beside the page. Everyone waiting outside understood that his next sentence could fracture either his marriage or his relationship with his heir. Charles knew the law did not hand him Diana's private estate simply because he wore the crown. Control rested with designated trustees, her son's representatives, and an independent archivist. Trustees are people legally required to protect another person's property and follow written instructions, even when powerful relatives object. That restriction mattered because the king could influence royal households, but he could not rewrite Diana's final boundaries. Camilla entered first. She told Charles she felt humiliated, as though William believed she had tried to steal a dead woman's memories. Her anger weakened when she admitted the deeper wound. The prince's suspicion was exactly what she had feared would define her forever. The Queen Consort had gained rank beside him, yet Diana's absence still carried enough force to place her intentions on trial. William met his father separately and spoke without accusation. He said he was not asking Charles to condemn his wife. The future king wanted one truth acknowledged, that Diana's private voice belonged first to her children. He also reminded the monarch that the residence project depended on crown administration, the system managing royal property and official work, which meant his father could stop the dispute without touching the sealed archive. Then Charles received the internal review. Sir Alistair Pembroke, Camilla's chief household advisor, had inserted the question about language that might limit the standing of the current queen. Pembroke admitted through a documented interview that he acted after a conversation held without her present. He claimed he wanted to prevent legal embarrassment. His own private notes told a harsher story. He believed Diana's instructions could permanently block Camilla from controlling the residence. Charles made the decision. He suspended Pembroke, froze the charitable property plan, and ordered every related communication preserved. The king protected William's boundary, but the ruling also exposed Camilla to a devastating truth. Her household had used her position, her insecurity, and her name to pursue authority she insisted she never requested. Charles understood that his choice had saved the archive, but wounded his marriage. As one palace door closed on the advisor, another closed around Camilla, leaving her alone with consequences she could no longer dismiss as William's hostility. By the following morning, the Queen Consort's office had been transformed from a center of royal confidence into the focus of an internal investigation. Security permissions were suspended. Correspondence was seized for review. Staff members who had spoken freely only hours earlier now avoided one another's eyes. Camilla entered her office, saw Pembroke's empty chair, and stopped without speaking. The access attempt had failed, but the damage had already entered her household, her marriage, and her standing with William. Charles authorized a formal review of every communication linked to Diana's estate. The king also approved a written prohibition from William's lawyers, meaning Camilla's household could no longer contact the archive through any official route. That restriction mattered because it removed both influence and deniability. No aide could now claim a harmless misunderstanding, and no future request could slip through behind royal rank. The Windsor project was suspended indefinitely. The residence would remain under Diana's existing estate arrangement, the legal structure controlling how property is used after someone dies. With the project frozen, the practical excuse behind the search disappeared. Camilla could no longer defend the request as necessary charity work, while William gained the protection he had demanded at a cost the Queen Consort felt in every silent corridor. Camilla dismissed her staff for the afternoon and remained at the conference table where the plan had taken shape. She turned Pembroke's empty chair away. The gesture carried anger, but also betrayal. He had acted in her name, yet she had allowed the pressure for answers to grow around him. Charles visited privately and tried to comfort her. Camilla asked why he had not defended her during the first hours of the crisis. The monarch answered that he could not defend a request he had never been told about. His words wounded her because they were not cruel. They were true, and the truth left neither of them anywhere to hide. Investigators then uncovered a draft statement prepared by Pembroke. The document called Diana's restrictions outdated and incompatible with the modern monarchy, though Camilla had never approved its release. A second message cut deeper. A junior aide had warned in writing that William would see the search as an attack on his mother's dignity. Someone had deliberately removed that warning from the final briefing. Camilla finally understood what clearing her name required. She would have to face William without advisors, excuses, or Charles beside her, and admit exactly which part of the request she had supported from the beginning. Their second meeting would not be a battle over authority, but a far more dangerous exchange, built on grief, responsibility, and an apology neither had ever expected to hear. When Camilla asked to see William again, she requested that no one accompany either of them. No lawyers, no courtiers, no king waiting in the adjoining room. William agreed, but he did not soften the conditions. Diana's files would remain sealed, the Windsor project would stay frozen, and the conversation would not erase what had happened. Camilla entered carrying no papers. For the first time since the crisis began, she was not seeking access. She was seeking to be believed. Camilla began without defense. She admitted approving a narrow inquiry into whether Diana's estate instructions affected the charitable residence, but denied authorizing access to personal letters or documents concerning William and Harry. The Queen Consort understood that an estate instruction is a written direction controlling how a person's property or records must be handled after death. She said her question had been about the building, not the lives contained inside those folders. William listened, but he did not let intention erase consequence. The prince explained that once his mother's correspondence was included, the request became a violation regardless of who expanded it. That mattered because private letters preserve trust, not just history. It also mattered because Diana could no longer defend her meaning if strangers selected, interpreted, or used her words. Camilla finally spoke about the fear beneath her actions. Living beside Diana's memory, she said, had made her desperate to understand which unseen boundaries still governed her place beside Charles. She admitted that uncertainty never gave her permission to search through them. Her honesty did not excuse the request, but it removed the last lie between them. William answered with pain rather than anger. Diana's files were not weapons against Camilla, he said. They were fragments of a mother he had lost too early, and protecting them was one of the few duties he could still perform for her. The future king made clear that rank could never replace consent. Then Camilla revealed the part she had hidden. Through a documented account prepared for the internal review, she admitted knowing Pembroke wanted to challenge the estate restriction. She had failed to stop him forcefully because she hoped the files might remove an obstacle to her project. She apologized directly, not for embarrassment, but for allowing frustration to endanger Diana's legacy. William did not forgive everything. He did, however, accept that the apology was genuine. Together they agreed to create a permanent barrier protecting the archive and to explain publicly why Camilla's household had been removed from the process. Once their private agreement left the room, the family's most guarded conflict became a public judgment on memory, boundaries, and the future king's loyalty to his mother. The announcement reached the public just after sunrise. Diana's sealed estate archive would remain under the exclusive protection of her sons and independent trustees, while Camilla's household would hold no future authority over access requests. Within hours, the private confrontation became a national emotional event. Broadcasters debated royal boundaries, newspapers revived Diana's most haunting photographs, and outside Kensington Palace, one silent gesture captured the public mood more powerfully than any official statement could manage. The palace confirmed that Pembroke had resigned, and the Windsor charitable project had been withdrawn. Officials also announced a permanent firewall, meaning a strict barrier that prevents serving royal households from requesting Diana's personal estate material. That rule mattered because it removed influence from rank. It also ensured that no future dispute over property could be used to reach private letters intended for her sons. Charles supported the decision through a recorded palace statement. The king described private family records as a responsibility owed to the people for whom they were originally preserved. He did not criticize Camilla, but his words made the boundary unmistakable. The monarch had chosen protection over convenience, and the public understood the weight of that choice. William watched the coverage from Kensington Palace and felt unease rather than triumph. The prince had defended his mother, yet personal grief was becoming public spectacle again. Support flooded in, but every headline reopened the same wound. Diana's private life could still command the nation long after her death. Camilla heard a television presenter describe the episode as Diana's final boundary being defended by her eldest son. The Queen Consort turned off the broadcast. She had apologized, accepted responsibility, and surrendered the project. But none of that could prevent her role from becoming the painful contrast at the center of the story. Then one front page captured everything. A national newspaper printed an unopened archive door beneath the headline, "Her words remain with her sons." Hours later, a young woman placed a single white rose outside Kensington Palace with a handwritten card, "A mother's voice belongs to her children." By evening, hundreds of flowers surrounded it. The public had delivered its judgment. What remained was William's choice: use victory to punish Camilla, or turn the crisis into a rule the entire monarchy would be forced to respect. He knew revenge might satisfy public anger for a moment, but it would also trap Diana's memory inside another family battle. The future king now had to prove that protection could be firm without becoming cruelty. In the final family meeting, William made that choice unmistakably clear, turning a moment of anger into a permanent verdict on how the crown would honor Diana. The crisis ended not with Camilla's defeat, but with William defining a principle the monarchy could no longer avoid. Diana's private life would not be treated as an institutional resource, a public relations weapon, or an obstacle to be removed whenever palace plans became inconvenient. In a final meeting with Charles and Camilla, the future king closed the estate file, rested his hand upon its cover, and delivered a verdict that separated personal memory from royal power once and for all. William confirmed that Diana's estate documents would remain sealed. Access would be limited to her sons, their heirs, and independent trustees, bound by confidentiality. A trustee is someone required to protect property or records, meaning Diana's wishes, not royal pressure, would control every future decision. Her letters could no longer be treated as palace material, and her children would never be forced to defend them from another household. Charles gave approval. The king authorized an archival rule, preventing any spouse, royal office, or charity from claiming access to a deceased family member's records without legal authority. An archival rule is a standard controlling who may examine protected material. By accepting it, the monarch placed privacy above convenience and made that protection permanent. Camilla accepted the ruling. She admitted that although she had not approved the intrusion, her willingness to test the restriction had allowed others to cross it in her name. The Queen Consort did not ask William to forget the damage. She asked whether her apology could end the punishment. William answered with restraint. Accepting her apology did not erase the hurt, he said. But endless punishment would turn Diana's memory into family warfare. The prince refused to let protection become revenge. He could defend his mother without destroying Charles's marriage, or deepening wounds that had already lasted decades. Then William made the decision. Diana's sealed instruction would remain unopened. He would not use his mother's words to embarrass Camilla or prove himself right. The property would remain untouched, while the charitable project moved elsewhere. Charles thanked his son privately for protecting Diana without exposing her pain. William replied that honoring his mother meant defending her dignity, not reopening her wounds. Camilla left knowing the estate remained beyond her authority. The future king left knowing he had protected Diana. Rank, the monarchy accepted, did not grant ownership over another person's memories. The archive door remained closed, the confrontation was finished, and Diana's final private legacy rested where William believed it had always belonged, not inside the machinery of the crown, but in the protected hands of her children. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.